Papers now on France 34. Dipti's joining us here on set. We're going to go to Bangladesh for the first story. The papers there are looking at the weekend's clashes between garment workers and police.
Those clashes coming predictably over pay and working conditions in these factories. The strike action has been going on for about 10 days, 2 weeks now, and this weekend saw particularly violent clashes between garment workers who barricaded highways. You had police who fired tear gas at them. You've already had one person who's died from these clashes, and the pictures there on the Daily Star, that's a Bangladeshi paper. As I said, one person already been killed. Now, what's interesting is 80% of Bangladesh's exports come from the garment industry. It's a huge source of revenue, employing thousands and thousands of workers who say that the pay they get doesn't reflect the rise in living conditions in the country. This, even as the government announced a slight pay rise for certain workers. That's what the New Age is reporting.
And some of the papers are pointing the finger at the retail giants that actually use these factories.
Well, that's the editorial line from the Dhaka Tribune. That's another Bangladeshi paper, who say that, I quote, the real villains are not local manufacturers, but the foreign buyers, because the foreign buyers need to start paying factories more. The paper adds, I quote, international buyers treat our industry like an amateur outfit, and that's a slap to our face.
Let's come back to France for this next story. This is it on the front of the Figaro today. Emmanuel Macron responding to the Yellow Vest protests. It's a letter which has been published in all the French newspapers today, really.
That's right. It's Macron's letter to the French people. The Belgian daily Le Soir says a letter that addresses a host of issues: tax, social justice, public services, the transition to cleaner energy. All these are contentious topics, and Emmanuel Macron says he wants to hear from the French people about their grievances. This as he launches a 3-month great so-called great national debate. I share your impatience. That's what one of the lines from that letter, and that's being quoted by Le Temps, the Swiss paper. He also did condemn the violence that's really dominated the Yellow Vest unrest. For Le Temps, the Swiss paper, his letter will do very little to quell the anger of the movement. But this tradition of addressing the French people is nothing new. In fact, Nicolas Sarkozy also took to the pen back in 2012 to talk to the French people.
And you found one piece, haven't you, that looks about why this is important, not just here in France, but for the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, and perhaps as proof of why there's so much international interest in this Yellow Vest movement. This is from the Gulf News writer there, talking about how one of the key issues for Macron this year is recovering his former popularity. The world watches on with interest because, I quote, the French president embodies the present battle in international relations between a rising populist tide and the center ground. That's what he represents. He's one of the last major leaders representing the center ground. To get back on the front foot, Macron will need to, quote, skillfully show how a fair, tolerant, inclusive, democratic politics can help overcome these challenges.
Now, the papers here in France are also looking at the growing list of violence committed particularly against journalists during the protest this weekend.
And they're pretty shocking. Threats of rape, punches, insults. These are just some of the violence committed against journalists this weekend, according to L'Obs. That's not including the strikes against the freedom to publish. Several printing centers were blocked by protesters this weekend to prevent the papers from actually running. Reporters Without Borders, the NGO, condemned the violence, but also paid homage to the Yellow Vest protesters who did try and protect the journalists, once again underlying just how nuanced this movement really is.
Something a little bit lighter now. Still in France, though, a local mayor in Paris has officiated himself the wedding of 2 giant, not people, teddy bears.
Yeah, that's right. These teddy bears are actually well-known locals in Paris. You might remember them. Yeah, they're part of the 50 or so crew of teddy bears that kept popping up at Paris cafes, metro stations, hairdressers, cars, even at ballet classes. They went viral. The bears were part of an experiment by a Parisian bookseller at bringing a bit of happiness to a city that often has a reputation for being grumpy, and it worked. It did put a smile on a lot of faces, and in fact the experiment is coming to its end. So 2 of them decided to get hitched. There's Nicolas and Pamprenel. They got hitched at the town hall of the 13th arrondissement this weekend. The mayor himself of the 13th arrondissement officiating that ceremony, which was attended by some lucky Parisians. But you see in the foreground there, I think there are probably all 50 many of those bears' friends and family as well.
Lovely. Did they walk on down the aisle on their own then?
That remains to be seen. I'd love to know where they're going on their honeymoon.
Speaking of viral, a new record has been set. This is for the most liked post on Instagram.
This is definitely the year of the ridiculous, Stuart. It's a picture of an egg. That's right, an egg that has dethroned the previous record held by Kylie Jenner. She's one of those Kardashian girls.
Cracked the record, isn't
It's oh, very nice.
Yeah.
The egg has been liked over 18 million times. It was posted by an account called the Egg Gang with the specific goal of dethroning the Kardashians. A good sport, Kylie Jenner, she actually responded by cracking an egg in the middle of the road.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dipti. Brightening up our lives with teddy bears and eggs. That's what we need after the depressing news of the day. Dipti Laurent with the papers on France 24.